Hey everyone, welcome back to the Critic-Verse. Today we're going to be talking about the penultimate episode of Superman Lois Season 3, Episode 12, titled Injustice. Now before we get to the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep updated on all things Critic-Verse. Now let's get to the review. Once again, this episode is titled Injustice, and that could be referring to a lot of characters in this episode. For one, Lois feels a sort of injustice from what her cancer took from her. Lex Luthor definitely feels a sense of injustice after being imprisoned for 17 years, partly because of Lois's own article. Sarah feels a sense of injustice that she is trying her best to keep Jordan's secret, but he isn't putting in the same effort. And Jordan also feels wronged that he has to hide who he is, unlike his father, and pushes back against his parents. The episode starts with a voiceover from Lois, with the famous quote, "Time heals all wounds," referring to what her mastectomy took from her, wondering if she'll ever be the same, with a montage of Clark caring for her after the surgery. Lois and Clark wonder what's taking so long for Luthor to be released, since his lawyers has had Bruno's confession for weeks now, indicating that we've had a significant time jump since the last episode. Then cut to Lex Luthor in prison, working out and enjoying a meal in peace and quiet before being informed that he's officially a free man. Now, cut to the high school. Junior tries to talk to Sarah again, and while Sarah continues to gaslight him, Junior reveals that he's actually talked to a reporter and done an interview about being saved by someone else with superpowers. While the boys and friends come to make fun of him, but Jordan seemingly didn't get the memo, as he actually comes to Junior's defense, much to Sarah and John's dismay. As Lois and Clark are on their way to the Gazette, they get a call from their old colleague Janet at the Planet, who was the person Junior did his interview with about getting saved by Jordan. And she wanted some pointers from Lois about how to run this story, since Lois was the first person to break the whole Superman story. Sarah is venting to Lana about the way she perceived that Jordan was acting, but we must have been watching two different scenes because I didn't really see Jordan as bragging. But Lana can see that Sarah is upset, which upsets her as well. Lex is a free man, but we then cut to a flashback of when he first went inside the prison, and Lois was there to see it all. Back in present day, Luthor had his lawyers delay any news of him getting out, and also telling to him to tell someone named Otis to meet him at a specific location. And Otis is one of Lex's most noticeable henchmen, I think since the Richard Donner movie, and he's had a couple incarnations in other Superman media. And he takes off walking. I guess since he's a free man, he finally wants to stretch his legs. At the fire station, Jonathan is still getting hazed, but after a lunch mishap, John notices Kyle has been giving him special treatment ever since he figured out that, well, ever since he was told that Clark was Superman. Lois and Clark are meeting with Sam to go over the Jordan situation, and he recommends grounding Jordan, and then just then, Lana shows up and makes it worse. For Jordan, at least. Next, we cut to Lex, still on his fellowship, and we get another flashback of Lex's first day. And he seems to be really good at making friends, because Lex gives 3 of the prisoners ultimatums, one to keep his cell, the other to keep his teeth, and the other one can still walk. Keep that in mind because we're going to come back to it. But they proceed to beat him to a pulp while he's surprisingly pleased about it. Now, back at the Kent farm, John is complaining about the special treatment before their parents get home, but Jordan finds out that he's actually the one in the hot seat and is confused as to why. Then Lois and Clark are chastising Jordan for his irresponsibility, and Jordan's phrasing doesn't help his case, but also neither does his issues with Sarah. But this is kind of weird, because in the episode where the incident originally happened, Jordan was worried and complained to Clark about it, but Clark eased his concerns. But now Clark is acting kind of like that part never happened. Lois and Clark kind of feel like they're overcorrecting to me in their method of parenting. The type of parenting that pushes a child away rather than reining them in. They even confiscate his suit. But next they see there's even an article about Jordan, and they acknowledge the difference in perspective their two boys have. Jordan has powers and wants to be recognized. John doesn't and just wants to be one of the guys at the firehouse. Now, Clark shows up at the firehouse to talk to Kyle about the special treatment he's giving John, much to Kyle's dismay, and I think this might backfire on John. Sarah is angry at Lana because Lana spoke to Lois and Clark about what she was venting to her earlier, breaking what little trust they have between them. Luthor continues his journey as we get another flashback. So after the beating, he got a private audience with the warden, and it goes as expected. He now has leverage over the warden, threatening his family, and essentially now Lex runs the prison. Back at the farm, Lois and Clark return the suit to Sam, but Lois is informed that Luthor was released. But Clark and Sam are more concerned that she's not ready to face him so soon after her treatment. We then get another flashback to Luthor's prison time, and with the warden under his thumb, he has the main guys he spoke to beaten while he watches. And he also gets the man's clippers free of charge. As he continues to walk with the visuals of a storm behind him. Kyle then talks to John about Clark coming to see him, and you could tell it upset Kyle, but he tells John to keep firehouse business between them. Jordan goes to the diner to question Sarah because Lana's complaint to Lois and Clark was essentially the linchpin on him being grounded from being a hero. But the animosity between them, she just blames it all on him. And then suddenly the town's tornado warning goes off, and everyone in town hears it. Clark and Lois hear it. Clark takes off, but so does Jordan. While the storm approaches, General Lane is driving, and the tornado is in sight, but he comes up upon a car accident, and being the military man that he is, takes charge of the situation and takes everyone to hide under an overpass. Clark shows up and flies through the tornado in the opposite direction while Sam's car is being picked up, but Jordan manages to knock it right back down. But he also sees an opportunity to reclaim his suit and go and help. He flies inside to help Clark, but Clark says he doesn't need help, but Jordan continues helping anyway. Now, they do manage to stop the tornado, but instead of flying off, Jordan stops to take selfies with his new fans, to Clark and Sam's dismay. And he makes it so hard to defend him. Like, all he had to do was just go home. Now, Jordan is really in the hot seat. And I could defend the scene in the school, but there's no defending this one. I mean, I understand why he did it, but I can't defend it. And Jordan goes full on teenage rebellion. He wants credit for what he's doing, despite what his parents say. And Clark gives the cliche, as long as you live under my roof, you follow my rules line. And I always thought that line is kind of bad parenting. And it, like I said, it pushes the kid away more than it does bring them in. But Jordan walks away and Clark grabs his arm and Jordan brushes him off with super strength. And Lois and Sam can only be bystanders in this part of the discussion, as Clark is the only sense of authority that can rein Jordan in. And Clark lays down the law and tells him to never do that again. And this scene is so tough to watch because you can see the anger and sadness in Tyler Hoechlin's face. What a great actor. Now, Jordan is drowning in all of the online clout he's getting as the Smallville Samaritan when John comes in to complain about their dad, and the two sort of have like a little bonding moment, and it's kind of cute for two brothers. Luthor shows up at the Kent farm with an ultimatum for Lois. Give up journaling or else, because he blames her for putting him away all those years. And also says Superman and the DoD can't protect her. Otis then arrives to pick him up, showing that Lex knew where they lived this whole time and just wanted to walk there, probably to practice what he was going to say. One last flashback shows Luthor shaving his head, getting his signature bald look, and the three inmates he threatened lost everything he said. He took Otis's cell, he took that guy's teeth, and the other one is confined to a wheelchair. Maybe they should have just given him the clippers for $5. They would have been better off. But everyone else stands at attention while Luthor eats, creating this crazy scene, kind of like Kingpin from Daredevil season 2. In the final scene of the episode, Luthor and Otis explore Mannheim's abandoned train lab and find Zombie Bizarro eating rats. And then he seemingly eats Otis. But Luthor seems intrigued. Okay, so this was the penultimate episode. And it definitely was the calm before the storm. And Lex Luthor is that storm. The entire episode, he's just walking, symbolizing the storm on its way. And right before he arrives, the tornado beats him to it. And just when the Kent family think that they're safe, Luthor, the real storm, arrives. Now, there wasn't a lot going on in this episode, but there was two big topics of discussion I want to talk about. The new Lex Luthor, played by Michael Cutlitz, it was a good performance, but it just didn't feel like Lex Luthor to me. He's the only Lex Luthor that I've seen that has the worst legal team. I mean, I always talked about if there was something that I wanted from the DC universe besides powers, it would be Lex Luthor's legal team. But then also, Lex Luthor sitting in prison for 17 years doesn't feel like Lex. Kind of felt like he would have escaped by now or would have been released with good behavior and an award from the president. But I mean, I got that he ran the prison technically, but it doesn't feel like that took a lot of smarts. Now, but I digress. Let's see what he has coming for us in the finale. Now, onto the Jordan situation, or the Jordan problem. Now, it's not a shocker that he's far from my favorite character on this show, but I don't think he was completely in the wrong, at least at the beginning. From his point of view, he was being mocked by his friends even though they didn't know it was him, and he was subtly defending himself. And even though they call it bragging, it didn't feel like bragging. Plus, it's not like any of the three people there that didn't know was just going to assume that Jordan is the mysterious savior just because he's not ragging on Junior just like the rest of them. And just because he said it was a badass. But the thing is, Sarah already being annoyed with Jordan sort of exaggerates the situation when she was venting to Lana. And Lana, taking her at word of mouth, takes that back to Clark and Lois. But it really feels like they overcorrected. and that harsh punishment that causes Jordan to snap back at them at the end. Like, Jordan says he doesn't know why he did it, and he did it specifically because if he reveals himself, then he can stop hiding. Well, at least he can still keep the mask and the goggles, but he doesn't have to hide quite as much. And he gets a little bit of attention, even though people don't know it's him. But people are going to feel how they feel about it. That's my take. That's all my thoughts on the episode. Can't wait to talk about the epic Season 3 finale. Thanks for joining me in the Critic-Verse. See you next time.